Today, I would like to speak with you about transform your yard and get paid to do it. And so as I start this, can I see, there are people out there who are interested in doing this? Can we see? Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, good. Let's just get on through it and see it. The picture on the front here is just a very beautiful picture of a school garden that's near Long Beach. It's still in existence. This is a pretty old picture, but Mike Letterello runs that garden and he has an open house in April. So keep your eyes open for that. If you're on Facebook, he posts about it. So let's get started. This cute little house is my son and daughter-in-law and grandkids' house, which they bought in 2021. And here it is in January of 22. And you can see it's got a big sycamore tree and it's got lawn. So I was surprised actually when my son said, I'd like to take the lawn out and do something else. I was very surprised actually. So here we are in March 2022, and those are his kids. And when he realized that they weren't going to be able to push the electric lawnmower very well, he was even more excited about removing the lawn. And you can see the lawn now in June of 2022, and this is important because it has to do with the rebate and city regulations and all this stuff. So the lawn is getting a little parched there in June. And this is a close-up, and I show you this because what you're seeing in that picture is St. Augustine grass, and it matters what kind of grass you have, okay? So St. Augustine is a big thatch, but of all the lawns, it's probably one of the easier ones to work with. So in August of 2022, he submitted a proposal to get a rebate for turf replacement. And I'm pointing out two really important things if you're going to do this. You cannot start the project before you get pre-approval, and you have 6 months to finish the project from the moment you get pre-approval. And when you set, so this is a very short time scale, because the way I get rid of lawn is I ignore it long enough and it basically starts to go away. There are caveats with that, as with everything. Yeah.
And this is with the state?
No, this is with Metropolitan Water District.
Okay.
So every, it has what?
It's a Sacramento address.
I don't know why it's a Sacramento address,
Okay.
but it is Metropolitan Water District, but it's run through each of the cities. So you submit your paperwork to the city and the city is supposed to make sure you meet all the requirements, but the money comes from Metropolitan Water District. Yeah.
And somebody in line just says that you can request an extension.
You can, but I didn't want to do that. You know, yes, you can request an extension, but yeah, well, let's just go on here. So the first thing to do is to make your plan. And I'm going to go back a couple of pictures here so you can see this again. So there's the front of the house. And then if we go right to here, this is just a schematic. It's not exact, but it's giving us a good enough idea. The edges are curved and I just made them straight. And I just kind of, I just cut it that way, just so that you had some idea of what the square footage is going to be like. And then we came up with this plan. This is what we submitted with the proposal. We were required to do this. And you can see over, I guess, yeah, I do. Here's the sycamore tree is right here. The house is back here. And one of the other requirements I have here, planted swale. That's not quite right. It's a rain garden because I looked these terms up, and a swale is moving water from place to place. It's more like a linear way to move the water. And here we're just collecting it. So it's a rain garden. So excuse that. You do have to have some kind of feature like that encourages infiltration. And I think it also, you could have rain barrels, just some way to keep water from going into the storm drains is part of the requirements of the project. And I think these are really important things to do. They're educational and they also have environmental advantages. So August 14th, 2022, it was submitted and they pre-approved it September 12th. So that's a month, that's not very long. And now the clock is ticking and we have until March 11th, 2023, unless we ask for an extension. So there we are. Now I have this, you're not supposed to read all the text on there. I for sure can't read that text. But I do want to highlight one sentence because it's going to become important. Acceptable forms of organic mulch include shredded bark, bark nuggets, or wood chips. That was for organic mulch. Keep it in mind. Okay, so here we are going through the process. Now you will notice this is August 2022, and we didn't get pre-approved until September. So, and the grass is pretty parched. So I don't think they'll come back for the money at this point. I think I'm safe. That's not legit. And if I were you and I were doing this again, I'd be more careful. You have to have green grass when you get the pre-approval. Go for the extension, have the green grass, because if they come at you, then you're out of luck. So over here we have, where'd that go? Here's October 2022. So we had August, and now we're just kind of throwing leaves on it and wood chips that we can get and not watering it and not doing much of anything. Okay. And here's my granddaughter. And believe me, this is the only time you see her like that. They're really good kids, but this is a good project. I hope they're not watching this. This is a good project to show to you because, when I put in my garden, I did it over many years, and this is my passion. My husband always says when I go out, I don't realize that 8 hours have passed before I come back in the house. That is not the case with these people. So you can look at this project and see something that may match up and be a little more realistic for the rest of you. So there's my granddaughter, and what is she doing? So we did not use cardboard. We didn't do anything. We just stopped watering and mowed the St. Augustine grass low. And the grass continued to grow along the edges because it's still got sunlight. You can't cover it enough with the mulch. So we did do digging out along the edges. Here it is in December, and almost all of it is gone on this side. Now on the other side, we have a sycamore tree. We continued to water that sycamore tree because that's what it was used to getting. And we didn't want to make abrupt changes to the sycamore tree. So the grass there, we were throwing leaves and everything on it, but it's going to keep growing. It still had water, and any bit of sunlight it got, that was enough to keep that going. So what did we do on that side? On that side, the side with the sycamore tree, I did a lot more digging out, but not a huge amount. But I dug it out along the edges and so on. This is January 2023. And March 11th is our date. So now I want to bring this up. One of the things I really truly like about horticulture and about native plant horticulture in particular is that there's a whole bunch of controversy. Who would think there would be controversy in this kind of thing? And here is the controversy about cardboard. Almost everybody I know, including Metropolitan Water District on their landscaping site, advocate putting down cardboard. This organization or group, I would call them, it's called the Garden Professors. They're people who work usually at extensions, like Linda Chalker Scott works at Washington State Extension, I believe. So they're faculty who actually look to see if there's any research. Anybody really look to see what happens when you use cardboard. And you can put down cardboard. This is not, a terrible thing to do, because what cardboard does is it really blocks the sunlight, right? And hopefully accelerates the decomposition that's going on beneath it. Unfortunately, it does a few other things. Number one, the cardboard should be clean. That means you've got to make sure it doesn't have plastic tape or other things on it that might be problematic that you're burying. The second thing about having the cardboard is what it really does is it interferes with the air exchange at the top of the soil. And this matters. Now, people say, well, I see so many earthworms under the cardboard, it must be great. Well, it could be they're suffocating under there. They're not getting enough oxygen and they're coming up to the surface. So what I would suggest, if you haven't done this and you're thinking about it, should I do the cardboard? Everybody says do the cardboard. Read what they have to say and make up your own mind and decide, because there is research that's been done where they measure how much oxygen and what's going on in the soil beneath it. And make up your own mind. And then if you decide I really want to have it, go ahead. At least you've looked into it. So here we are, it is January, the clock is ticking, and I'm digging holes through St. Augustine thatch is what I'm digging holes through. It did not decompose all the way, but it was dead brown and it was pretty rough. And I was worried. I was nervous about it. Bless you. I was nervous about it. Was the grass all going to come back? What was going to happen? Because I hadn't done it this way. I've gotten rid of lawn in almost every way imaginable, except for cardboard, mind you. But anyway, so here it is. And I dug the holes, I planted them. Here's the end of the day. It looks really neat. If you look over here, can you all see the arrow a little bit when I'm moving it? It's kind of hidden. Here's the sycamore tree. And we've thrown the leaves on there, but that grass is still really growing on the other side. But we got this side planted. There's January 23 again, and everything looks pretty good. I point this out because we have to have a water feature. I called it a swale. It's a rain garden. This was really fortunate. They had cobbles around, these boulders around the yard. It was used on the yard. They didn't have to buy any of those. And not only that, in this very spot on that side of the front lawn, because I got on Google those historical maps of their house, there had been a tree there that died. And so there was like this depression that was just right where we would want to have it. And I am told by my son that when it rains hard, it does fill with water. So it is doing, it's not doing a whole lot, but it's doing something. So we put the rocks in there, and that was our way to have the rain garden requirement met. And it was very, very simple. But as you can see, it can be simple or as complicated as you want it to be. There are just all kinds of things you can do using gray water, using directing water off of your roof into the yard. So there are many different ways to meet this requirement. There's a lot of information on the Be Water Wise site about this, and that's a really good resource. So I told you before that you needed to read that little thing that I highlighted, because next we got a disapproval. We didn't get approved. And it said, in order for your submission to be approved, we need additional photographs that represent the footage and areas that you are applying for. If you have any questions about what areas are missing, please contact us at. So my son called him up, and I'm thinking, we did the square footage right. The error message, as it were, was meaningless, but he was able to reach them while he was at work very easily. They looked up the file and they said, let me see, is that what the next picture is? And they said, leaves are not an approved organic mulch. I could have thought of a million reasons they would have nabbed us. That was not one of them. So there we are. There's our leaves sitting on there. So what he did was he called up a tree guy and had a truckload of wood chips delivered to his house. It cost $50. That's wonderful. And he didn't get all these bags of plastic bags from Home Depot that he had to carry. We measured carefully so that we knew what square footage we needed to cover this property. That truck comes to your house, it's dumping. It is not measuring square footage. You get what they have. The only thing I would recommend for you to be really careful about with this is, people worry about disease and all that. That's not usually a big problem. Palms are a big problem. So if a tree guy's been doing palms, that stuff does not decompose. And if there are seeds in there, you're going to have really hard weeds to get rid of. So make sure it's really wood chips from trees and not palms. That would be the only thing I would. And again, we worried about it a little. So there's the big pile of mulch. And what we did next was we actually raked off most of the sycamore leaves. When people asked me last time I gave this talk, why not just pile the wood chips on top of it? And we certainly could have done that, but we had so much of those sycamore leaves that I was afraid it would be hard to cover and that it would really be too thick. And sycamore leaves are really tough. And when you're talking about aeration and stuff, I was worried about them kind of getting sodden and forming a cardboard layer under there. So we did rake those off. That actually, I didn't do that. My son raked the leaves off and they spread the wood chips. And, it does look better. I think it looks better. And there are probably more plants in there there are more plants than you can see. And there are requirements on this with the number of plants for the square footage as well. But I did not want to plant a whole lot under that sycamore because the sycamore is probably just fine because you're going to have to water anyway. But I just don't like to disturb under trees a whole lot. But we did plant a bunch of stuff. We planted things that took more water and that could live with the shade. So we have some strawberry under there. We have some Pacific Coast hybrid irises under there. Which plant is doing really great under there, and it's listed as being a plant that needs full sun, and it does not get it. And I've seen it many places growing without it. Is Lepicinia hestata is a Baja plant. You're never going to find it in the trade. Do we have this one? Did we get it? We couldn't get it. Darn. Well, if you contact me, it spreads. When it spreads enough on my yard, I'll share. It's doing really well in their yard and my yard. So anyway, we wanted that and we saw it someplace, but didn't see it. So anyway, there's the yard. It looks good. The other thing you have to do, I'm going to talk very briefly about, is irrigation. So they had a good irrigation system there with a lot of zones and a controller inside. The zones were set up a little, I didn't understand why they set the zones exactly the way they did, but it was okay. But you're not allowed to have overhead irrigation when you put this in, when you do a turf replacement rebate. And I disagree with this because I think if you irrigate properly, overhead irrigation can be very, very good and it's not wasteful. You have to check your system, make sure it's working. You have to make sure that you can water once a week, once every 10 days, once a month, whatever it is. If you're going to use a controller, or better yet, just set your controller to go off because it's going to be 100 degrees. It's still cool. This is what I always do. I hear about that hot weather coming and I set it and water it. So I just have it go off this one time for a long time and get everything soaked in. So I use my controller in kind of a non-automatic way, which is really the best. But my son and his family, we've got a teacher, a librarian, and 2 elementary school kids, and a lot of pets. They're not doing that. So we just set it once a week, basically. And that's been working. So how do we do this so that we can get away with, we're not going to use overhead if we're getting this rebate? Well, Rainbird has a retrofit kit, which costs, they're pretty expensive. They're like $25. And you look at that and go, that seems like a lot for that thing, but the technology in it is worth it. They work. And you can see in the bottom left side right here is an old pop-up sprinkler. They remove the pop-up sprinkler. All the other pop-ups get capped off. You just cap them off. You take the sprinkler head out and you screw something on. It's not hard to do. You pop the retro kit in there, and then you can connect. In this case, they've connected a 1/2 inch poly tubing to it. They have other connectors so that you can have the 1/4 inch spaghetti tubing going directly from it as well. And that is exactly what I did. And here it is. You can see I dug it out. And right here is the poly tubing. It's really easy to do. And so now what you have, I hope I have a good picture of this. Yeah, I had a video, but they don't work a lot of times. So I decided to go with a straight picture. So here's the little emitters. Now, a lot of people don't like these. A lot of people say these are the worst thing you can use to water a native plant or any other garden. I have used them a lot and they do not break that much. You have to check them. But I'll tell you why I like them. If you're going to be burying tubes that have holes in them, so it's going to be a drip thing under the ground, those things were designed to evenly moisten the entire bed. They're not designed for specific, like this plant's going to get it, or this plant. They're designed really to be placed evenly in a grid to moisten the whole bed. I like to water the new plants as they're coming in because this helps with the weeds. So, and with this system, it's so easy. It's like Tinker Toys. You can add, you can subtract, they break, but you just fix them. It's not that expensive. You move them around. I use them in my vegetable garden all the time. I love them for vegetable gardens. I don't use them in my home native plant garden because my plants are big and mature, and I'd have to have like 20 of them around these plants. So for those, I either water by hand or I do have some overhead, but then I want to really wet the whole area and allow those roots to get out there and go far. This is a really good thing for a beginning new garden, just to get it started first 2 or 3 years. And then as the plants really get going, you're going to be watering much less. And in my son's garden, what I would do is I would put the pop-ups back in. So he would be doing overhead watering once a month. And I think that works well. I did hear the ooze about the flowers. We'll talk about that. Yeah, and we have that native plants live here sign, which you can get at our plant sale coming up. By the way, I buried that poly tubing. I only took this picture so you could see how the system went. And it didn't take me long to put this together. So let's talk money now. So what do you end up getting back? At that time, it was $3 or $4. And I can't even see this. What is that? It's $3. It was $3 per square foot. It goes up and down depending on how each year and funding and so on. So he ended up getting almost $1,600 back. Well, what did it cost him to do it? Well, let's talk dollars and cents. I dug a bunch of plants. So plants in my garden in South Pasadena, like Abutilon palmeri, Palmer's Indian mallow or apricot mallow, reseeds itself all over my garden. So I just dig those out and bring them over to his house. There's the plant sale, you can buy them. But we did very well. And his total came to $706 before you count in my time, which I got pizza dinner.
That's irrigation retrofits.
And no, I did.
Irrigation.
What about the irrigation?
What did it cost for the retrofit?
It's in, is that, yeah, it's in there, $71. The whole irrigation, everything was $71. Yeah, the mulch was $50. So $706. The list of plants is over there. The 1 5-gallon, he wanted a pomegranate. My son wanted a pomegranate plant. And I heard that Parfianca, something like that, is supposed to be just great. So we did plant it and it looks quite nice. Now, in addition to turf removal, you can also get in different cities rebates for individual plants that you put in that are low or very low water use plants. This is from the city of South Pasadena. And this list is based on, I don't know if you can read that, but it's based on the WALCALS. WALCALS is water conservation. No, it isn't. Where is it? Yeah. Yeah. Water use classification of landscape species. And I want to take a moment to explain what this is, because I spent a lot of time talking to my city about this. First of all, this is just the beginning of this list. This is many pages, this list. And then what this list is you can get on the WALCALS website. You can put where you're from. And then you can say, I want low or very low or medium water use, and it spits out a list. Okay, the list is native and non-native. It does include invasives. Our city says the invasives, you can't get rebates for invasives if they manage to find them all. And by invasives, they're talking Calipsy. So there are many plants that are really problematic, but they don't rise quite to the requirement of Calipsy, which is a pretty high bar to be considered an invasive by California Invasive Plant Council. So they allow plants that I wouldn't be comfortable using, is what I'm saying. And it turns out that if you look at this list, deergrass is not on this list because for WALCALS, it is a moderate water use plant. And the reason it is because the way they measure how much water use a plant requires, how much water a plant requires, is they compare that plant with how much water a cool season grass requires. How much water does a cool season grass transpire in different locations with different sun amounts? Native plants grow totally different. And this does not make any sense to me because it doesn't tell you how to water the plant. It doesn't tell you what it needs. It doesn't tell you a lot of things. And that is why if it's 40 to 60% of what a cool season grass requires, it's moderate water use. And there are other muhlenbergias that are low water use, and deergrass is not. And deergrass is my favorite plant. So I went to battle with the city. I don't know what's going to happen. I think this is a terrible list to use. I said it. So what would you use instead with a city? Well, CalScape, CalScape's been in development for a long time. And for anybody who does not know about CalScape, just get online, calscape.org. It's fun, it's pretty, it works well, its information looks pretty good. It's a really great website, but it's for native plants only. And the city wants to give you money for a low water use plant that's native or non-native. They don't care. They don't want it to be invasive, but they want to have non-native plants in there. So anyway, the way CalScape does it, and this makes much more sense to me with regard to water use, is here's the definition. Extremely low are plants that can live on normal rainfall, and you don't have to water pretty much at all. Very low is 1 time a month, roughly. Low is 1 time every 2 weeks or twice a month kind of thing. Moderate is once a week, and high is 2 times per week or more. And that tells you what to do. It just makes more sense than the other. So here's the Be Water Wise California friendly plants. And there are plants on this list, fountain grass, feathergrass, that I think are problematic. They're non-natives. But by and large, they've come a long way with this. And they do identify which plants are native. They have relatively good information. This is a nice site to use also to find some recommendations and figure out what to use. Okay, how am I doing time-wise? Am I good? Great, okay. Good. Okay. Well, let's talk about drip irrigation. No, we talked about drip. If in addition to what you had to do for MWD in order to get the turf removal rebate, which was an irrigation component and a plant component, and I asked my city, you can get the rebate both for the turf removal, meeting their requirements, plus an additional rebate for the plants based on your city. So you check what your city says and tell them, I'm going to go for the turf removal rebate. Can I also get a plant exchange rebate? And you can also do this for the drip irrigation. You're required to do it to get your square footage money, but you can also get some money back on that. And then you have to save your receipts and you get reimbursed. Yeah.
So you're required to have drip irrigation, or can you have no irrigation?
You can have no irrigation. What they don't want to see, and in fact, when we submitted ours, they basically had no irrigation because I didn't get that drip in until after we got the rebate. So I just capped off the system. The system was capped off, and that's what they want to see. They want to see that you don't have a working system. Yeah, it was a little loosey-goosey there, but so you can have no irrigation is fine. But if you want to do some kind of drip or low volume or whatever you want to do, you can get money for that as well. And these things add up. So now let's talk about what happened next in real life. And this has happened in everybody's garden who's done this. The weeds start coming up the next year. This is February 2024, but they were coming up as soon as you add water, rains, whatever, weeds are coming up. We have poppies coming up in this picture. Here are some beautiful poppies. And over here, we have oxalis. This is one of the really nasty weeds. Oh my God. Here it is. Now, I want to point out this bulb right here. Nuttle, nut, bulbule, whatever you want to call it. What it is food for that plant. And if you just pull out the green part, that little nut is sitting there and it is all ready to grow a whole new part. So this is when I look at new gardens, this is one of the biggest problems that I see in them. And you really have to dig it out and you have to get that nut out. Now, I know a lot of people like to put vinegar and salt and hot water and all these other things on, and it's controversial, but I'm not going to get into the controversy, but I will tell you, it's not going to do anything to oxalis, because that nut is going to sit on the ground and it's going to be all ready to grow again. You're going to kill the green on the top and it'll be ready to go again. Yeah.
I have a different experience with oxalis because I had read like for me early on, I had read that just pulling the nuts distributes more nutlets.
Pulling the
nutlets out doesn't even get them all.
Oh, okay.
And
I'll repeat
also,
what you
I
said.
forget which famous, Amy Stewart.
Mhm.
She like sieved them all out and
Yeah.
still had them. And I had read that you could harass it out of existence.
Okay.
And we have more or less done it.
Okay, hold on. We're gonna get to harassing. I want to say this so that everybody back there, did everybody back there hear it? What was said? Okay, well, and we're gonna repeat it for the people online. So Orchid said that she heard that if you pull it out and get out as many of those nuts as you can, as many of the little bulbs as you can, all you're doing is encouraging the ones that remain, and there are ones that remain. You cannot get them all out. She said Amy Stewart, a famous author, went to the extent of sieving her soil so that she could get out as close to 100% of these, and they came back. And they learned that you can harass the oxalis into submission. I mean, it's always going to be there. The point is to keep it somewhat under control. What is harass?
So to harass is to just come through and cut off those green tops without pulling, just quickly with a hula hoe or a little linear hole or your fingernail or whatever, or scissors. I like scissors. Just cut them between the flower, and there's a little stem, and then there's a little bunch of stems above it, and I'll just get that one. And I won't even do it as a project. I'll just do it while I'm walking through the garden doing other things. And I have done this at more than Jennifer's house, but Jennifer had it badly.
Oh, really? You had it badly?
Very badly.
This is news to me. Thank you.
It's also a great job to do while you're on a conference call.
Okay. So we learned this is a good job to do while you're on a conference call. This is a good job for grandchildren. So, I've always tried to dig out as much of it as I could. But I've never had a really horrible infestation either. And I think what I end up doing is what you're saying, which is every time I see one of those, the leaves of those things. So what she's doing is she's not allowing it to photosynthesize. And so over time, it uses up all the carbohydrates that are in that little bulb, and eventually it goes away. But it means, and my son is not, their family is not going to do this. I'll do it. But you have, anytime there's green, it's photosynthesizing. Anytime it photosynthesizes, it feeds that little nut down there and stores some of it. So you really have to be good at that, but I'll try that. Which means, it's basically what I was doing. I'll just do it in a more sloppy manner, which meets up with my personality perfectly.
The other thing, in a really good rain year, if you get the ones with a little radish at the end, it looks like a clear radish. If you can get those, it's holding all those little nuts together. And so you can get a lot more of them. You have to be pretty patient, and it's already got the blight to it, that yellow stuff it gets. But if you see healthy ones, and if you see ones with flowers, pull those darn flowers off right away. And there's a difference in the oxalis. So the pink ones and the yellow ones.
And there's a creeping one, and there are like three. There are like at least three nasty.
Well, no, the creeping one doesn't have
It doesn't. No, it doesn't have the nuts, but it creeps, and it's pretty nasty too. So what was said there was that if it rains a lot and you get in there and you get this so all those little nuts before they really develop, it's almost like a clove of garlic is almost what it looks like. And if you get those out. So, I mean, basically,
Thing is, then you put cardboard on it and lots of mulch.
okay, cardboard and lots of mulch again. You know,
Don't get any light.
yeah, but that, if the nut is under there and you put that cardboard on, it can last a long, long time.
You see, because it is so nutritious when it comes back, it's this big healthy plant and it's really easy to dig out.
Okay, well, we're hearing different opinions on this, and everybody can go and you will find it. I think the moral of the story is don't ignore it. You really do want to try to get out as much of it as you can. And let's face it, it's not a problem you're going to say it's solved today. You know, it comes up in my yard. I've never had, like I said, I never had a bad infestation. It'll come up here and there, which means your eyes have to be open and you have to be, you know, that's what successful gardeners do, is they notice these things before they become such a bad infestation that they're really, really stuck. Nutsedge, purple and yellow nutsedge also has a little bulb underground. And the theory would be the same for that, would be cutting the green leaves off, because they're even harder in some sense, because they don't even take pesticides well, because those blades have like a coating or something. It's a really very difficult weed to get rid of. And it's a heck of a lot easier to just constantly be going in and cutting them off, finding the fastest way to stop them from photosynthesizing. I give information on here really to point out that the best place for information on how to deal with pests is the University of California's invasive plant management website. And at the end of my presentation, and I post these on my website, there's a list of all these websites so you can find them later. It's important to get good information. And I call it the invasive plant management website is really good. Pest management, I keep saying plant. Now let's talk, this I have had Bermuda grass. And the whole talk that I've given to you has ignored, there's been an elephant in the room called Bermuda grass. So my son had St. Augustine. I had a lot of St. Augustine places. I had Bermuda grass. They behave really differently. You can bury St. Augustine and it will go away, pretty much go away. You can bury Bermuda grass and it is still there and it will come up. It will creep in here, there. If you rototill this or oxalis or many of these other weeds, if you rototill them, all you're doing is cutting them into little propagules and spreading them. So do not rototill. Don't do that. It also ruins the structure of the soil. But so this one's a really hard one. And you're just going to have to get in there and dig it out is really what you have to do. I think the theory would follow that if you just stopped it from photosynthesizing long enough, and maybe even it'll take less time because it doesn't have this nut, this bulb stem. Yeah, okay, we got another tip. Come on.
I will. So in the beginning, way back 20 years ago, we would use glyphosate. I dug out Bermuda grass at my own house. I would not ever do that again. I ruined the tilth. I ruined the soil structure by doing it.
Yeah.
And most of your good organics are in your top 2 inches. And if you remove that, you have destroyed, what you've destroyed what's going to fulfill the needs of your plant. So, but I had sometimes labor do digging if people would not spray. And we got to the biologist at Debs Park, whose wife was pregnant. They were young. They didn't have the money. They weren't going to use glyphosate. They were the kind of people who would do their own labor, but she's pregnant. So I said, well, there's this thing we could try. I do not promise you anything. And you will collect a lot of cardboard, because they were the kind of people who would do that. These days, for a job which we use contractors on, I just use mulch paper. It avoids the glue of the cardboard. It's a little lighter weight. It's still light exclusive. But they had a very deep backyard, about this big, twice.
Wow.
And I thought they won't get all the cardboard. We won't get it dark enough. And they did it, and I supervised it. And we came back 3 months later, and there was some just extremely exfoliated, weakened Bermuda that you could just dig out with a fork. And it did not come back. And so that was about 2006, and I just started doing it at any garden that would do it, because if you use glyphosate, you have to spray 3 times, and of course, no one wants that in their yard anymore. And labor, again, is just destroying your soil structure. And mulch paper, it's a little more expensive than collecting your own cardboard, but it comes on rolls, and you can just roll it out.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's really a great idea. You know, in this case, mulch is your friend here as well. You throw enough organic mulch on this, the Bermuda grass will grow up through the mulch, but it's much easier to get it out. So you just go after it in that way. I love that idea. You know, the other thing about the cardboard, if you have a tree or you have some really mature plants and they have roots that are all through this, and you put the cardboard, that's a little more worrisome. I like the idea of, what is it called? Mulch paper,
Mulch paper.
mulch paper. I love the, okay, mulch paper. I'd want to know what it is exactly, but it sounds good. Yeah, throwing stuff on top and keeping after it is going to be the solution to this, and don't let it get out of control. Yeah. So why not weed cloth? Weed cloth is a product that should be illegal. First of all, you're burying plastic, number one. You can get some kinds of weed cloth that aren't plastic, but that's not what you're getting at Home Depot or the places we go to. These are just pictures I've taken all over my city. If you have organic mulch, the mulch decomposes over time, and there's the weed cloth, and it's ugly. If you have inorganic mulch, the weeds are growing in the side, and it's a lot harder to get those weeds out when you've got the weed cloth there. It's just a terrible product. Here it is with the weed cloth so that the organic mulch slides down the hill. It just doesn't work, and it makes your life a lot harder to do everything and anything else. And there's the issue of air exchange at the top of the soil as well. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, well, I just use it in places where I have paths and I'm not going to plant anything. And you can do that. I put in flagstones in my front yard over this whole area, and the contractor really wanted to put weed cloth underneath them. I said, nah, I'm out there all the time. I'll just weed them. I haven't had any problems. I have to say, remember my husband's words. You think you were out there an hour, it was 12. So I am warning you about this, but by and large, I just don't think that weed cloth is necessary or useful. So there you go. Now, when we were doing, this is back to my son's yard, and this is the crepe myrtle up at the front by the sidewalk and the driveway. There was weed cloth used in that yard, 2 layers of it under the sycamore tree and 1 layer under this crepe myrtle. And when we pulled that stuff out, that soil was disgusting. It had no structure. Now, it was a rainy winter, but there's that stuff is on top of it, and you're not getting the kind of activity, organic activity from worms and insects and plants and bacteria and everything that you need in a really good soil when you have this. It was his idea to pull this stuff off, and he did most of the work again. It's funny during this talk that I have to point out exactly how much work everybody in my family did or didn't do. But forgive me. Anyway, when we pulled it off, I could almost hear the plants breathing a sigh of relief, some air. So get that stuff out of there. Here's the yard, first year, yeah, poppies, elegant Clarkia, wildflowers, you want that. Here it is in May, and the elegant Clarkia back there, Clarkia unguiculata. There's verbenas in there, a whole bunch of stuff. This I'm showing you, this is the rain garden, which you can't see very much, but all those things go away because they're annuals. They don't want you to have really significant plants in there because you want infiltration there. So that works out. Over at the, oh, that looks terrible. Looks much better here. Anyway, over on the right-hand side, you can see the abutilon, which I'll point out again. So things are looking pretty good. May of 23, they had gotten their money in March and they're happy. Here's the garden under the sycamore with the irises, the Lepicinia histatas over here. We do have a bunch of other things in there, and a non-native salvia that I put in. It's a cultivar from Mexico, and it's called Marine Blue. And why? It's good, right?
It's really good.
Yeah, and I use that because I know that that plant is very durable. I know it flowers almost all year, and I know it grows into a significant looking thing quickly. And I wanted all those things because it was important to them too. So it looked good, and it's still looking good. Here we are, January of 2024. We've, yeah, everything's looking pretty good. Here's May of 2024. Notice this. I love monkey flowers. Isn't that monkey flower gorgeous? Right up front, looks so beautiful. We have white sage. We cut the flowers back after they went to seed. We waited a while. The only reason for cutting them back, particularly with a young plant like this, is so that the stems don't break from the weight. Yeah.
You made the same mistake I did. I put it too close to the edge.
Yeah.
It just wants to go out in the street.
It does. It does. It's a little too close. And I made that mistake. Anyway, but I really want you to see the abutilon back here is beautiful. You see that back there? Yeah. And the monkey flower is quite nice. But the reason that I show you this picture is because this is it now. And right behind the white sage, that brown scorched thing, is a dormant, not dead monkey flower. And monkey flowers pretty much look like crap much of the year. They look fabulous in the spring, you know, and some people can accept that and some people can't. It does not belong front and center. I can tell you that. And my son did, and it's just sitting there and they don't seem to care, but I'm taking that out. That's not staying. The abutilon's huge. And that's another great plant for a young garden. Even if it doesn't last a whole long time, your garden shows some life there right away. And the deer grass, oh, I love deer grass. Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna put in another one. I thought I put in two, but it needs another one. I cut back the monkey flower, but I'm gonna take it out altogether. And now this is my front yard, and it looks like this pretty much every spring, March, April, May. Some monkey flowers will be going into May. The cultivars bloom at different times, and it looks really great. I'm willing to put up with it looking like this much of the year. So what I do with it is I intersperse the monkey flower with deer grass, which is green at this time of the year, pretty much, and other things like California fuchsia, epilobium. Back here are manzanitas back there, and they're very green. And I have a barberry up here that's green. So when you're planning your garden, this is something that's really bugged me recently a lot. If you hire somebody, they show you this picture of all the plants that they're going to put in your garden, and they're all blooming spontaneously. And you think it's going to look like this all year. These are California native plants. They have dormancy, and we need to think about this and recognize that at this time of the year, this plant will look okay or good, or at least have some green leaves like the abutilon does all the time. You want to mix them up and intersperse them so that it doesn't look horrible at any particular, unless you're okay with that. You know, dormancy can be beautiful, right? Brown and gray, it's beautiful. So you want to do that. Yeah, another question.
Interspersed your grass in your yard, but you're taking it out of the sun's yard flower.
Well, that one is right up front. It's just way up front. Yeah. Yeah, it's just too ugly. It's just too ugly. Um, but I may do what you're suggesting is mix them together and have them in place. No, I've been thinking about it. You've been thinking about it. Yeah. Anyway, so what I'm suggesting here, though, that is really important, is to recognize that California native plants do go dormant. They don't all go dormant only in the summer. Some go dormant in the winter, and you want to mix these things up so that your garden has a balanced look throughout the year and a different look at each season. So that pretty much ends it. I want to again advertise for the plant sale. And we will be open for questions. This is the Be Water Wise, their new campaign, which I love. They've always had really, because they have a lot of money. My water bill is really high, and and I'm, in the first tier. I don't use that much water. If I use no water, my water bill would be almost the same because my water bill is based on the size of my meter. And like $20 every 2 months is the water used. So, so they have money, but their campaigns have always been fun and good. And on their website, bewaterwise.com, they have really good videos. They have a good video on taking out lawns, which show you the different kinds of grasses and what to do and how to do it. So I would advocate taking a look at that. Like I said, you can't read all of this stuff, but it is on my website, which is weedingwildsuburbia.com. And the presentation, an earlier version is up there. I'll put this one up as well. So all of these links I checked, I think they're all still functional. The integrated pest management pest notes, that's where you go for your information on how to get rid of ants, how to get rid of rats, how to get rid of weeds. It's a good website. Let's see. As was mentioned, I wrote a book called Wild Suburbia, Learning to Garden with Native Plants. It is not in print anymore, but it is on my website and you can download it. Some people I have heard from one person that it wasn't working. It works on my computer. So if I hear from more people it's not working, I'll pursue that more. But you should be able to just click on it and get that. I also have a lot of gardening resources on my website. When I was doing all this work in my son's yard, I did a series of blog posts called Lawn Be Gone series. It was supposed to be 1 through 6, and 6 was going to be irrigation. I never got there, but I may get there. So you have 1 through 5, and you can follow a lot of the things with a little more detail than what we covered. If you're new to this, Carol Bornstein's, Dave Frost and Bart O'Brien's book, California Native Plants for the Garden, is really important. I think it's got a new edition now. It's a really important book because there's all kinds of information out there, and I believe these guys. So their information is, except they're very optimistic. Nobody wants to put in a picture of an ugly plant. So you don't see that scorched looking monkey flower in their book. So keep that in mind. Calscape has become a tremendous resource. Tree of Life Nursery, which unfortunately is closing down next year, has always had incredible educational materials, including very good videos on how to plant, really good videos, blog posts, all kinds of information, and hopefully that'll continue. So thank you very much. And we've had a few questions, but if we have time, we can do more. Yeah.
Any other questions, Roger, online?
I don't see any online.
I'm such a good explainer.
Thank you.
You got a bunch in house here.
Yes.
I want to ask you to remind people that you have on your website a resource that a lot of people ask me for. And
What is it?
and it is the maintenance calendar.
Oh, right. Yes, there is something called a maintenance calendar. This came out of work at California Botanic Garden. We had a 1-page sheet, which just gave you a very rough idea of when to prune, when to do various things. And it's just, it's really very helpful. So yeah, the maintenance calendar. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think if I'm not mistaken, that Calscape tell you the blooming periods of the various plants. so that you can decide that, you know, I'm gonna get some fall blooming plants and get summer blooming plants and spring blooming plants and disperse them about your yard.
Right. So for the people online, the comment was made that Calscape does include information about when things bloom. And they probably include dormancy, but you have to have the right mindset so that you're remembering that dormancy can, you know, in Celia Californica, bush sunflower is another example of a plant that I grow it in the nature park, that we have volunteers working in, and it reseeds all over the place, and it looks dead much of the year. And as soon as there's a drop of rain, it greens up, and then it'll start to go into bloom. For a plant like that, you can cut it to the ground after, you know, when it's starting to go into dormancy, and water it. A plant may not last as long, but it may be a better plant for you in your garden. So there are strategies like that to deal with it as well. Karen.
I just want, you can tell people online, we haven't really advertised it, the city of Monrovia is gonna be giving away 75 5-gallon, post live oak trees. So anybody,
At the plant sale, the city of Monrovia is going to be giving away 75 5-gallon Coast Live Oak trees. That's amazing. So people really do want to get to the plant sale. That's a tremendous giveaway. That's really great. Okay, yeah.
Harassing.
Or Harris.
That process, and the other benefit of doing it that way is that I actually enjoy pulling weeds, but
Yeah.
that actually releases the seeds of other plants that are.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the comment that was made was that he hadn't heard about the technique of we called it harassing or harassing, whatever, to get rid of the oxalis and some of the other noxious weeds by cutting them off so they can't photosynthesize. He likes to weed. But in addition, when you do, and it is true, when you do pull weeds out, you are disturbing the soil and you are releasing other weed seeds. The least amount of disturbance to the soil is really what you're after, because you will have fewer weeds. Weeds like disturbed soil. So I agree. And you said a question? Right.
Does Calscape mention how much water
Okay, so the question is, they tell you roughly how often to water, but they don't tell you how much. And that's up to you, Ed. The reason it's up to you is because it depends on what kind of soil you have, right? And even the once a month, twice a month soil matters. If it's really sandy soil, you have to water more often. But what you're after is getting it wet, really wet, soaked, not drowning. But you want the soil wet, and you want it deep, and you want it below the roots and beyond the roots so that they can continue to grow into the wet area. So you need to check your soil and feel it. And, you know, with my son's garden, I do my best by setting a timer and looking at the plants and seeing that things are okay. But really the way to do it is to get in there and feel the soil and check it. When your plants are younger, you don't have to get the water quite as deep. As the plants are growing and the roots are getting deeper, then you want that water to go down further. And the goal is that eventually you have plants that don't need to be watered often at all. And you'll know they need to be watered because you look at them and you see them and you follow the weather forecast. And if it says it's going to be brutally hot and it's something that's not in deep dormancy, you might want to get it watered before the heat wave comes. This is a really important point. It's almost impossible to not water a plant when it's 110 degrees out, but they've shut down. They don't take water up when it's that hot. I have a hard time with that too. You really, when we get into these real hot spells and you have young new plants, you got to get them watered before the heat. You want that water in the plants, in the cells, in the leaves, And if you can throw sheets over them or whatever, those strategies help. I'm sorry?
Umbrellas are. good.
Umbrellas, chairs, sheets, whatever. Give them shade. Yes.
Is there such a thing as an indicator plant?
Oh,
Because
yeah,
I
you know,
just-
that is, yes, there is. Oh, that, boy, that brings me
Yeah.
back.
In my apartment, the weirdest things are thriving and other stuff is just, it lives, but it doesn't ever grow. It's very
My
strange.
flower pots, but it's-
Well, I don't know. Sometimes people get concerned because native plants sometimes can take a while to get going.
Oh, this garden is 40 years old.
So some things just sit there and they just don't do anything?
Monkey flowers sit there,
Do they bloom in the spring?
but just, they're little and they don't look great.
Hmm.
But the funny thing that blooms all the time is the island snapdragon, and I have two different kinds of it.
Yeah.
They're both enormous.
Yeah, well, yeah, so she's pointing out that different plants have very different behavior in her garden, and it's hard to know, do any of them indicate things about water? What I thought you meant when you said indicator plants is a plant like a mature manzanita has very stiff stems, and it can be really, really hot, and it's not going to wilt down very much. New growth may, but the old growth won't wilt down because it's so stiff. And you can, Bart O'Brien told me this. He'll have another plant next to it that's a more tender plant. And when he sees the tips of that starting to go down, that informs him that it's dry for the manzanita as well. So that's what I thought you meant when you were talking about.
The manzanitas are, well, I got a second manzanita because they told me my first one had the disease and would die.
Yeah,
It didn't,
yeah.
but it gets dead branches occasionally. I just cut those off.
Yeah, well, it sounds like your garden's doing fine, though. I mean,
It's fine.
that's the fun thing with native plants is,
I bought a deer grass. It's the real structural one. I got it at one of your sales.
Mm.
It's a wonderful plant, but it does seed all over.
a deer grass, because mine has never seeded in my garden, and I would love it to seed.
I mean, I've got it all over. And the other thing, if anybody wants holly leaf cherry.
Oh, yeah, I've got that.
Big ones,
I've got
and
that.
that's delicious.
Yeah. So we were talking about things seeding around. Yeah.
Want to make a point about the location.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a point about the location of BJ's garden, which is that monkey flowers. So if deer grass, if you live closer to the flat than the slopes, and deer grass does well, you're in a more of a meadow area. And monkey flowers are kind of more of a slope plant for us.
Yes, yes.
And so a lot of what people have a hard time with, like people are like, I like this pretty plant and I like this pretty plant. And I have to say, I like every pretty plant I like, whether it belongs in my garden or not. But figuring out your ecosystem of your area is the best way to make it easy. And so if you're up in the foothills, monkey flowers are going to be easier for you. If you're down in the meadows, they're going to be harder.
These plants are still wild.
Yeah, the plants are still wild. Yeah. Yes.
Do you ever fertilize any native plants? No.
I don't, because, I live in South Pasadena and we've got deep, rich, good soil. I don't remove leaves very much. So there's, it's always getting new nutrition. My vegetable garden, I do, and not enough in the vegetable garden. But no, for the native plants, I don't. And generally speaking, unless it's something very special, it does not. A plant that grows quickly is not always what you want. Everybody is impatient, but when they grow really quickly, sometimes they die more quickly, sometimes they break. Sometimes you just have to be patient. So we don't want to push it with fertilizer or anything like that. Now, I will say that there are areas and gardens that are in really sandy soil, and they don't have a lot of nutrition in the soil. And some of those gardens, I have been told over the years that if they hadn't supplemented somewhat they really wouldn't have gotten anywhere. They would have gotten somewhere, but they weren't willing to be patient enough and they wanted to push it a little.
That's one
more-
sandy there. That's a wash that I live on.
Yeah.
It's an old river, so I could water my desert plants
Mhm.
every day.
Mhm.
The water just goes.
Yeah.
But the oak tree and their leaf mulch from all the plants are really.
Yeah, yeah, the
creating a
oaks,
great habitat.
right. So no fertilizer necessary.
No,
Yeah, I think I'm not gonna go. Any other questions or comments or? Okay,
We're coming
well,
up
that
on
was
the-
fun. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Let's give it up for her. How about Barbara Eisenstein, right?
Thank you, thank you,
Fantastic. Thank you for speaking.
thank you. That was fun, really was.